Greetings, everyone. Keith here. Make sure everything's on. Okay. And greetings, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, and loving life. We're going to give it a few minutes, see if we can get some like, share, and subscribes out there to get some people in on the platform. I'll drop my StreamYard link to invite people up here in a bit. In the meantime, the PayPal link is pinned in case anybody wants to share some love. I put a lot of research into this, and I'm looking to I still need a pair of glasses. I was raising funds to get that and a laptop. Somebody came up with a laptop for me. I spent 6 days downloading videos and files, and all of a sudden the network adapter corrupted on me. So I've got to get that fixed, or my old laptop fixed. I'm on my old laptop now with the messed up keyboard. So I'm going to do the best I can until I can get something else figured out. So again, if you can share some love, I'm in need of some help to get things set up so I can continue doing this. In the meantime, want to make it important that people comprehend it's important to hit that like, share, and subscribe button to get this information out there, because we're talking about the Obligor today. And like I said, it's a culmination of research that I've been doing explicitly for 7 years. Although I've been doing other research throughout my life in various different venues that I've been involved in, but never really put my foot to it. So for the last 7 years, I've done nothing but this. And the culmination comes down to the difference between the name and the number and who's party to what in regards to the contracts and the trusts. And so we're going to talk about that in regards to the obligor, because the obligor is the party that's primarily liable. And I've mentioned UCC 3-402 before in regards to how the authorized representative is not liable on the instrument for the person named in the instrument. And so if the person named in the instrument has a liability, where does it lay? And that's what we're going to be talking about. That obligor has a primary liability. And through my research, it shows that the obligor is identified by a number. And then the secondary obligor is the one that's identified by a name. And that name is done by the enumeration at birth. And that's where the number is attached to a name. So the enumeration is what it's all about. And the enumeration is an attachment to a name. The name that they use is literally a translation of a given name and a family name to a first name and a last name. That's the translation. Then there's another translation, if you want to call it, but it's actually also a conversion. It's a different version of what was before. So the given name and the family name, two separate things, are combined, and it's called a contraction, just like shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't, can't. Those are contractions where they combine two things. And now it becomes a first and last name. That's a legal identification. Okay. Now, another conversion, like I said, is a last name, comma, first name. And that's a different style. That's a military style. They do the same thing with numbers. They use different styles. The social security number with 2 dashes is one style that uses 11 characters. The social security number, being the same number without the dashes, is another set of characters but it's limited. It's only got 9 characters now. It leaves out the 2 dashes. So it's a different style. And that indicates a different use, a different set of records or system of records. We're going to be talking about that. All these different conversions shows that it's going somewhere else and it's pertaining to a different record somewhere. So we're going to start out with identification requirements. And then we're going to look at how do I get paid for a private relief bill. And then meaning of obligor or maker in determining limitations on securities investments by member state banks. Then we're going to talk about obligation, obligee, and obligor as defined in 46 U.S. Code. We'll also talk about payment of redemption during lifetime of owner and exchange of real property held for productive use or investment. So let's get started. Oops. Where is it? There we are. Okay, like I said, we're going to start out with identification requirements. And this is one of the things I want people to comprehend. You are never going to be required to have identification on you. Like I said, the family name and the given name are converted. As long as you know who you are in that sense, that style, you never have to convert it. You never have to give them what they're looking for, which is a commercial identification, the legal name. Okay? And they've asked me for it many times now, and I don't have it. I don't have possession of the legal name. You'll have to see who holds those records. And that resides in that system of records. Now, if they're portraying it wrong, that would be, of course, part of my doing because I'm the one that entered the data elements when I was younger that created those records, the educational record, medical record, employment record, selective service record, Social Security record, all of them. Okay? If I had not done that, it would never have been created. They could have tried to coerce me, but had I known what to do, and this is part of the problem with public education, we don't teach each other this stuff. Not until we're like 50 some fucking years old and have to spend 7 years of research doing it so we can then start teaching our younger generations. But then most of the generations in between are still indoctrinated and they don't want to believe. So they dismiss it. So this is the stuff right before you. I've done this for 7 years. I show you the sources and everything. Identification requirements. The appropriate, because they're going to appropriate funds. So to appropriate funds, the system manager specified for each system of records will require reasonable identification from individuals to assure that records in a system of records are disclosed to the proper person. So if you're putting your private data elements into a record and it's for the purpose of disclosure, do you really want them disclosing those private data elements? That's your question. Because if you really want to operate privately, then why are you giving up all your private information? There's at least 35 codes, and I've posted them that show you aren't supposed to be using that Social Security number. 35 at least in the U.S. code and the CFR, the code and the regulation. 35 of them that say you're not supposed to be using that Social Security number. Identification requirements will be consistent. Consistency is a requirement. Identification requirements will be consistent with the nature of the records being disclosed. Pay attention. They ask you about the nature and the cause of the case. Next, we're going to payment or redemption during lifetime of owner. And again, this is the last one was under collection, maintenance, use, and dissemination of records of identifiable personal information, rules for disclosure of records under Title 18. That's criminals and crime and procedure. 31 U.S. Code is money and finance, and it's directly related to the Treasury, and it's payment or redemption during lifetime of owner. Now, this one talks about the retirement bond, an individual retirement bond. And like I said, they took the family name and the given name and converted it. And in like kind, you can take one of their instrumentalities, namely the birth certificate, flip it over. It's already got 2 seals. It's already authenticated. Flip it over and put your directive on the back. And one of those directives is listed in the details of the video below, where it talks about the transfer of title. Expenses incidental to transfer of title to agency, expenses incidental to transfer of title to the United States, and expenses incidental to transfer of title to the Postal Service. Now, this is a chain of title. You're going to move it up the line, and it's going to be all those records I was telling you that you entered, that you helped create. You have to call them all back. And you're going to call them all back by the name and numbers that were used on those records. The name and number used for the medical records, the name and number used for the school records, all of them. And all of those different records are going to have another number attached to their record system. And it's all going to lead back to an obligor. And like I said, the obligor is identified by a number. The obligee is identified by a name. And you're going to give that directive pursuant to 50 U.S.C. 4305 B2, wherein it's going to be named in the interest of the United States for full acquittance and discharge, and no person shall be held liable in any court. And it tells us that prior to age 70 and a half, general. And they use the term general in relations to the General Education Provisions Act. All of these codes that say general, they apply generally because you applied generally through the applications that you filled out. So it's a general application that they give out to everybody. And if you want to apply, you can apply. Then they have particular applications that you can provide, that you can fill out if you reach certain requirements. Then they have specific forms that you must fill out once you reach other requirements. Okay, so specific, particular, and general. You're part of the general population. And so all these codes are implied to apply generally. And that's to people that are volunteering to do it. You don't have to. We're going to talk about that later. They're going to say selective service is required, and I beg to differ. It says an individual retirement bond will be redeemable. And since we didn't actually work for them as an employee, but it was listed as an individual record, it still shows an investment in the employee program for compensation through the benefits of employee retirement plans by being in record known as the annuitant. Will be redeemable at its current redemption value upon the request of the registered owner, blah, blah, blah. You can read it. And it says, if such evidence is unavailable, one of the following documents may be furnished in lieu thereof. And it says, in the form of a duly certified copy of his birth certificate, showing that the owner has reached 59 and a half years of age. This is supposedly when you can retire. This can be rebutted. The 59 and a half years can be rebutted because the record is not correct, and therefore it must be retired because it can't fulfill the duties of either an employee, individual, resident, federal, state, or municipal officer, or agent, judicial officer, trustee, public, plaintiff, or defendant. Can't meet any of those requirements. It's impossible. And again, we're going to talk about that. Church records of birth or baptism, hospital record or hospital birth record or certificate, physicians or midwives' birth records, or certification of Bible or other family records. So it could just be a handwritten memorial. written at any time. It doesn't have to be an ancient document. You can write it up on the spot. You can speak it in court, and they will write a transcript, and you have an automatic right to have a copy of that transcript. Many ways you can do it. You have to free yourself in mind. Military naturalization or immigration records, and that's that birth certificate. It is a military document. It applies to the Department of Defense under 5 U.S.C. 301, departmental regulations. Minimum birth registration requirements, Plain Writing Act. We've gone over that one. Other evidence of probative value. These courts of administration are under the regulation of the Selective Service. Selective Service regulates all administration and operations within the area of their jurisdiction. Similar document, and that's because that probate, that means there's no will. Probate literally means without a will. And this is why those probate courts have no jurisdiction over you yourself as a living being. Scott versus McNeil. A court of probate has no jurisdiction over man who is in fact alive. Similar documentary evidence will also be required to support any claim meaning a debt, by any owner that the date of birth shown on his bond is incorrect. This is one of those things where we've been going around and there's an inconsistency, because every time they ask us for a birth date, we give them the date we were born on, and the file record will show that the birth date is not the same as the born date that we've been giving them, the date we were born on. It's an inconsistency. 26 U.S.C. 1031 exchanges for change of investment. Now, the 26 U.S.C. 1031 is exchange of real property held for productive use or investment. So when you fill out an application as an individual, resident, employee, whatever, and you give them that address, that's a contract. You're constructing a contract. And what you've done is you've handed them back a document that has information that is your property, and it's made in an exchange, and they're going to use it for productive use or investment. There's a clause, though. Property outside of the United States is not of like kind. So you have to put it in the interest of the United States, because it's outside of the United States. Every state action is outside of the United States. So they do everything without the interest of the United States. Yet every obligation, every claim, every debt, obligation, or other securities of the United States, that Federal Reserve note says it's for all debts, public and private, because that's the obligation of the United States, is for all debts, public and private. So you just have to put it in the interest of the United States, and that's 50 U.S.C. 4305b2, full acquittance and discharge in the interest of the United States, wherein no person shall be held liable in any court. So let's go on to the next one, which is the definition of obligor under the Federal Reserve banks and banking systems. So this is a system of records, and meaning of obligor or maker. Maker, meet your maker. Under UCC, it's a note or a draft. It's a promise to pay if it's a note. It's an order to pay if it's a draft. Pay to the order of the United States in the interest of the United States, and to the person making the same, for full acquittance and discharge, wherein no person shall be held liable in any court. So the person that's primarily liable is the one that assigned the number, and that's the United States Department of Defense enumeration at birth. Okay, in the interest of the United States, the enumeration at birth is in the interest of the United States under 5 U.S.C. 301. In determining limitation on securities investments by member state banks. Social Security Administration has an accounting relating to all bank accounting. Meaning of obligor or maker in determining limitation on securities investments by member state bank. From time to time, the New York State Dormitory Authority offers issues of bonds with respect to each of which a different educational institution enters into an agreement to make rental payments to the authority sufficient to cover interest and principal thereon when due. So if the United States holds the interest, who holds the principal? The holder of the instrument. You get a birth certificate from the state. It already has 2 seals on it. It's already authentic. It's property outside of the United States, and you need to merge it with the United States through the numbering and the naming to place the interest in the right place and the principal in the right place. Otherwise, it's a hypothecated security. Hold on. Get in here. Sorry about that. So your government is an educational institution. That enumeration at birth is meant to be entered into the National Archives, the Library of Congress. Think about this stuff, folks. The Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System has been asked whether a member state bank may invest up to 10% of its capital and surplus in each such issue. Paragraph 7 of Section 5136 of the U.S. Revised Statute 12 U.S.C. 24 provides that in no event shall the total amount of the investment securities of one obligor or maker held by a national bank for its own account exceed at any time 10% of a centum of its capital stock, a surplus fund. So one obligor or maker. As a secondary obligor, you are the maker by signing. They give you an application, you write on it, and that makes the instrument. The bank gave you a check and you wrote on it, pay to the order of. You are the maker of that instrument. You drafted it. Is there an order to pay? Or did you forget about that and not make any notations or draft any directive or give any instruction? Were they the ones giving you instructions? Do you feel dumb now? I did. So, and when we click on this blue line highlighted, it's going to bring us back to this exact same definition. Source 12 CFR 250.142. The board considers that within the meaning of these provisions of law, obligor does not include any person that acts solely as a conduit for transmission of funds received from another source. Again, if the United States is the one that's providing all the sources of money, the funding, they are the primary obligor, and you are not solely acting because they authorized you to do so on their behalf. UCC 3-402, the authorized representative giving an unambiguous signature on the instrument is therefore not liable for the person named in the instrument. And that person named in the instrument has a liability, and that liability is attached by a number. So again, you are not the obligor. The obligor is identified by a number, and I'm going to show you here. Before we do so, we're going to go to, Okay. This is 46 U.S. Code 53701. And we're going to look at this, I believe it's shipping. We're going to look at obligation, obligee, and obligor defined here. Obligation. And remember the last definition we talked about rental. And now we're talking about mortgage. And it's mortgage on a vessel. All of those mortgages you have, those are mortgages on the paperwork, guys. That's where the liability is. Okay, it's not a mortgage on the home. It's not a mortgage on you. It's not a mortgage on your person. It's a mortgage on the paper. And when you go to a bank and you sign up for a loan, the bank has two options. They can process it as a loan, or they can process it as a mortgage insurance installment plan, where instead of taking out a loan, you are now placed in the paperwork as an installment payer. You're going to pay the installment fee for the insurance on the mortgage instead of fixing the paperwork. Obligation. The term obligation means an instrument. It's the documentation. It's what's being instrumentalized of indebtedness, whether it's a credit card or a credit application, an employment application. It's a setup for debt. If you have credit on one side, then there has to be a debt on the other side. If you have debt on one side, there has to be credit on the other side. In all forums, you have to have an equal balance. An obligation issued by secretary or administrator under section 53(7)23 of this title. And an obligation eligible for investment of funds. That's at 26 U.S.C. 1031. It's an obligation, in other words, an instrument. That application is an investment of funds. When you go down and you get a job, you fill out that employment application. That is an investment of U.S. funds known as Federal Reserve notes or electronic funds transfers to give you credits for your labor. Okay? The United States is primarily obligated. That's where the employer gets those funds. That primary obligation is set. Traffic citation, it's not. It's issued by the state. And the state can only get those funds from the United States. So they have to apply them to you and then sucker you into signing for them as a secondary user, as a conduit, a pass-through. They're still going to get that obligation from the United States, but they're going to get it from you because you're the sucker that's going to have Federal Reserve notes or a check. So, the next one, obligee. The term obligee means the holder of an obligation. Hold on. Hello? Sorry about that. So, the term obligee means the holder of an obligation. That's that instrument, that application that you accepted from the employee or from the employer. You're now holder of an obligation. He offered it to you. You accepted it. Now you have to honor it. That's the obligation on your side, is honoring the instrument. If you don't know what that instrument is conveying, then you need to unlearn and relearn. 11, the obligor. The term obligor means a party primarily liable for payment of the principal of or interest on an obligation. So if the United States is primarily liable for payment of the principal, that's payment of me, I'm the principal, of or interest. See, I'm the principal party of the interest, and I have to hand the interest over to him as a holder of the instrument. I have to turn it over and put the directive on the back and hand it back. Okay? Otherwise, I follow their directive as implied on the front of the application. Of or interest on an obligation. So they have an interest on the instrument because that interest is in the signature because you're the secondary obligor. You're the conduit. You're the pass-through. You are not the liable party. The primarily liable party is the United States under 18 U.S.C. 8, 18 U.S.C. 7, Special Maritime Territorial Jurisdiction of the state, performing commercially as a merchant under the admiralty enforcement of the United States military. Again, 5 U.S.C. 301. So let's look at obligor as defined in Investopedia. An obligor, also known as a debtor, is a person or entity who is legally or contractually obliged to provide a benefit or payment to another. The United States is the one, through the Department of Defense, the one obliged for the security instruments under national security for the benefit of the general welfare and domestic tranquility, according to the Constitution of the United States of America. That's their obligation. They're obliged already. It is already written. What is written, so shall it be done. In a financial context, the term obligor refers to a bond issuer who is contractually bound to make all principal repayments. So I paid as principal, and they're bound to make all repayments. 18 U.S.C. 8, obligations and other securities of the United States, the first words in it, includes all bonds and interest payments on outstanding debt. Now, if the debt has never actually been paid by the primary obligor, then it was only made a payment in confusion and the record is still in error and needs to still be corrected. And repayments need to be made. Repayment is synonymous with redemption. Remember that, payment or redemption within lifetime of owner. The recipient of the benefit or payment is known as the obligee. The recipient of the benefit or payment is known as the obligee. So if the court received the payment, the benefit, then the court is the obligee. If the hospital received payment, then the hospital is the obligee. If the pharmacy received payment from you, then the pharmacy is the obligee. If the emergency room at the hospital gives you a piece of paper and it says sales agreement, and in that sales agreement it says that the customer agrees to make payment so long as credit is extended to the customer's account, then that means that I'm supposed to pay it and they're supposed to repay me. It's all congruent. An obligor is a person or entity who is legally or contractually obliged to provide a benefit or payment to another. An obligee is a person or entity receiving the payments or who is owed the obligation. So again, if the court says they're owed that obligation, then you have to get it from the United States, not me. You got it from me. I'm only a conduit. So again, 22 CFR 91.3. Excuse me, 93.1. Let me look it up and make sure. I hate doing this. Yes, 22 CFR 93.1. Service through diplomatic channels of process. That's that service. That's that address. You keep using that address as if though you're a federal, state, or municipal officer or agent whose resident presence is deemed necessary and claiming that you're a resident on every application out there. You're not. You don't qualify. It's impossible. The record is in error. I'm sorry. I repent. Had I understood that before, had I known that before, had I discovered that before, I'd have never been filling out those applications. I'd been flipping them over and putting the truth to the record right away. If you want to receive equity, you must first come with equity. If you want the truth out of it, you have to come with the truth. So that record isn't true until I put the truth in it. An affirmative covenant is something that the obligor is required to do, such as hit specific performance benchmarks. Constitution are specific performance benchmarks. In family law, there are certain cases when a court order requires one of the parents, the obligor, parents. Remember we were talking about rent earlier, and it's patriotic rent. It's patriotic rent. See, your next of kin is your mother, not your father. You're not supposed to be paying tribute to your father in earth. There is no father in earth, for there is but one Father which art in heaven. You're supposed to be paying tribute to your mother in earth. The obligor to pay child support to the other parent. The obligor is identified by a number, and I'm going to show you that. First, we're going to go here. This is the selective service system, folks. Guys, they say that you're required. It says men under 26 must register. That's a lie. That's a lie. That is inconsistent. Let's put it that way. Let's say it's an inconsistency, because according to the selective service, men who wish to take upon Title IV medical insurance and higher education are required to sign up for selective service. If you do not wish to apply for medical and higher education through the Social Security Administration, then you do not have to. Social Security is volunteer. It is only once you apply for medical and higher education that you are then required to register for selective service. This is forced labor. They say you have to have that Social Security number to have a job. No, you don't. Saying you have to have one contract with Social Security Administration in order to be able to then contract with other people is false. You have unlimited powers of contract. You cannot say, well, because you're subject to this contract, now you have to register over here. No. If you don't know how to fix those contracts, then you will be belittled and you will keep signing and be obligated or obliged under your own belief that you are required to pay. But under here it says required information, last name. They don't want the first name. They want the last name because it's a military style. So when they put the military name first, the last name first, comma, first name, that's a military style. When you put the first name and then the last name, there's no comma. That's a legal style. That's a legal commercial entity. It's still a commercial entity under the military style, but it's the military style of the legal entity, the admiralty side, and not the merchant maritime side. Maritime, you're required to have a license. Admiralty, it's a certificate. They want the social security number and date of birth. Remember, we talked about the date of birth? And you're still going to give them the same thing, the date of birth, as the day you were born on. But when you get down here and they ask the last name and they ask social security number, look what they do. They don't want the social security number. And they could have the social security number because this system could take in that social security number with dashes, but they specifically want the social security number, no dashes or spaces. And they're saying that they're getting you to believe that that's the social security number. No, they're having you enter the social security number with no dashes or spaces, and that's a different style. And it's a different style because it's not according to the legal name for maritime purposes. It's according to the military name, according to admiralty purposes. Okay. So here we are. They're looking for that social security number without dashes. Okay. What about the females? What about the women? See, I'm not a woman. And I've asked people to do this. I've asked women to do this. Go to this, look up, see if you can look up a selective service number. I know women enter the military, but nobody's come back to me yet to see if it's the same thing. Because I guarantee you, women, you're not even required to apply for medical and higher education. That's the purpose of Title 42. Social Security is to provide for the welfare of women and children. It never once mentions men. That would be another inconsistency, right? If they're saying that you're required to have selective service. Well, when did that requirement come in? Did that come in when I applied for Social Security? Serious questions. So let's get back to it. I'm going to drop the StreamYard link for anybody that wants to join. I'm going to check chat real quick. And yes, once again, guys, please hit that share, like, and subscribe. Get the information out. And I want to welcome everybody. Sean and Source, Mimi, Texas, Jimmy Shively. Welcome. Anybody else that's here. Again, please hit that share, like, and subscribe. Hit that PayPal button. Share some love. I need some new glasses and a new laptop, or at least get one of these fixed some way or another. The new one I just got. I did 6 days of downloading files and videos, and it evidently it burned up the network adapter. So I need to get the new one fixed. Great work, Keith. I'm not going to, well, maybe I should. No, I already quoted it to you. The emergency room paperwork that I filled out last year when I first learned, or before I learned it was actually cancer. I went into the emergency room with some pain in my shoulder. And the paperwork they gave me, on the top, it said sales agreement. So I read it. And in that sales agreement, it said the customer agrees to make payment agrees to make third-party payment so long as it's understood that credit is given to the customer's account. So when this hospital is trying to ask me for any kind of payments that are an extension from that emergency room visit, where in further doctor visits declared that I had lung cancer, and now they might want any kind of payments, I have to go back to that sales agreement and say, well, if I pay you, then I have to have a repayment. So the only way I can do it is by a birth certificate in the directive to pay them what they're owed in the interest of the United States. And if anything comes back to me as principal, then it's due me, no one else. So if you really want me to make payment, then I'll make payment, but I got to get a loan or something because I don't have that kind of money. I'm not supposed to hold Federal Reserve notes. Those are for advances from one Federal Reserve bank or one Federal Reserve institution to another by Federal Reserve agents, and I'm not a Federal Reserve agent. That's what disqualifies that record. Okay, so let's look at this pharmacy thing that we got for a prescription. Look at that. Right there in the top. It's got the last name, comma, first name. And the interesting thing is that when we look at this, it's got that last name, but it's only the first four letters. Now, it doesn't say it on this document, but I've got another document where it does say it, that's the firm name. This is the military style using the last name, comma, first name, which is a translation of the given name with the family name and converted to its military rather than legal. And this is the corporate or military company name. Company A, B, C, D. Yeah, that's military company as a firm. Firmament, the mentality of a firm person. Okay. The next one, I'm going to go to a screen share again. And this nice little doozy here is from the local courthouse. Okay. Now, these are the people that are demanding the payment, right? Fines, fees, and penalties. And those fines, fees, and penalties are listed, again, in the military style, but they're using not the last name, as it would be the military style, but the firm name. And this is at the top. It's for the full index, financial index, both general, civil, and criminal. Full index. So it's got both the general and criminal. Remember, we talk about that general. It generally applies because I'm the one that gave them the name, address, and birth date. Okay. I put it on that identification and carried that identification with me. That's what's doing it all. Okay. So they've got a firm name with the first name. You go over it and there's nothing for the middle. Then they've got obligor. Now notice this obligor. Notice the obligor here is 9 numbers. So it's 9 characters. Now, just like the site we saw with Social Security, looking up the Social Security or the selective service number, if I look up my selective service number, it's not going to be the same as Social Security number. So what they did here was they took the obligor number and they put it down here as a Social Security number and claimed that it's a Social Security number, but it's not the Social Security number style. So this is an inconsistency on their document, on what they gave me. So they gave me an instrument that is not honorable. I cannot honor this instrument. What I can do is declare. When you go to customs, what do you have something to declare? Yes, it's on the back. I had to customize what you gave me. I customized it, and you can turn it over and see the declaration. The declaration is I declare there's an inconsistency, and because of that inconsistency, here's a directive for full acquittance and discharge for all matters herein to the person making the same in the interest of the United States, wherein no person shall be held liable in any court. It's a clearing and settling of the record, and that's that pertaining to the transfer of title, expenses incidental to the transfer of title. So you're just going to gather up the records, which has got all those titles. They're all enumerated and named, and you're going to transfer them. Expenses incidental as you follow them up send them up the chain of title to fix them in accordance with the contract that it doesn't have with the Postal Service. You cannot be a representing agent. Your resident presence was never deemed necessary. Period. So let's look at this a little bit further. So the obligee is Keith Little. Not Little Keith, but Keith Little. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The obligee, the obligor is the number without dashes. The obligee is the Social Security number with dashes. The payor is Keith Little. The payee, or actually a payor would actually just be Keith, the given name. And then the payee would be Keith Little or Keith Orland Little. One thing I do want to note on this document is the PIN number right here. Every credit transaction has to be verified with a PIN number. So what they did here as a court, they took it as a deposit into a financial institution, and then they extended credit to themselves based on the bond. Or they extended credit to somebody that wasn't named and it never got claimed, as this record shows. Okay. So, and I don't know why the notifications aren't going out or anything. Again, like I said, I've been shadow banned. They struck my original channel, so I'm having to deal with this channel that I set up as an alternate. So it's just a matter of time and time and energy to get this stuff back out. I had planned on doing some Sunday night video reviews and was wanting to do that, but they're giving me problems with it, and until I get that figured out and actually start doing it from my own website, I don't know that I'm going to do those reviews anymore. It's just too much of a hassle. Until I get the whole thing figured out, just stream from my site. That way nobody can strike it. So until that happens, I'm really sorry about everything that's going on, but there's not much I can do about it. I'm doing the best I can, and all I can do is hope everybody else will hit the share, like, and subscribe buttons, hit the PayPal button, share some love, and help me out the most they can. But in the meantime, I don't see anybody come up on StreamYard to visit and discuss it any further. So again, going over the information, discovery should be: who is the obligor? How is the obligor defined or identified? And ask them questions that are already there, that you already have the notion to. And for folks that are wanting to share through PayPal, you should be able to share just by hitting that PayPal link. If not, let me know. Don't just imply it. Let me know if you're hitting that PayPal button. I will try to design another PayPal button. But as far as I know, that you should be able to donate through that link. And it should be pinned. Yeah, it's pinned. Oh, and what you'll have to do is you'll have to come to the, if you want the PayPal link, you got to come to the YouTube channel. It's not going to be posted on my other sites. This is all done through StreamYard, and it's all going running through YouTube. So though it's visible on Facebook and other platforms, you got to come to the YouTube channel to get the PayPal link. My apologies until I can get this all figured out, where the links are shareable. And like I said, this is an alternate channel. It's new. So they restrict me from being able to post links and stuff like that until I get a certain number of views and subscribers. So it's all a matter of overcoming all these steps once again. And it's important for you guys to learn this stuff so you know where to find it. You know, that's why I urge everybody, and I get I get disappointed because I see in my analytics that people aren't like, sharing, and subscribing this stuff, and I don't know why. I mean, it's simple stuff that identifies. You know, I show you my own work, where they're doing this stuff and how it's done, and why. And I have no idea why people can't ask these simple questions and then get back to me with their results. It's because nobody's doing it. You're not even hitting the like, share, and subscribe button, and you think I'm up here doing these videos and asking you to do that, and I'm good with it, and I am. But it's still disappointing when I see my analytics and I know very few people like, share, and subscribe. So I don't know if it's my presentation or what, and I don't really care. I think the presentation is a matter of truth, and if you think it's a message from me, again, I'm just a conduit, just like the information I posed to you before. I'm a conduit from him. I'm just a pass through. It's not me giving the message. I'm doing the research and showing you where all this shit's at and how you can use it. It's up to you to use it. So, meantime, God bless. Remember, I love you, but I really don't give a fuck whether you love me back. Have a good day, everybody.